Hello, our topic is the power of high vibrations. It seems like every year we start using higher and higher and higher vibrations. It's not unusual now for us to go up into vibrations that are in the 300s and 400s. And this, of course, sounds, unbelievable. It also sounds complicated. It's actually not complicated, and I want to give you an example of why we've started using higher and higher vibrations. Basically, what's happening is we apply the principles that we always use, and they take us there. I'm going to show you an example of Charlene and Gerald. I don't know if they pronounced it Gallego or Gallego, and this is an unpleasant subject. They were serial killers. And here is the birth chart of Gerald Gallego. Now, a dream of mine for over 40 years, since I got into astrology almost 50 years ago, is could astrology actually help us identify what's going on with two ends of the spectrum? On the good end, the best and brightest and most creative, what's going on with them? And if we could find out what's going on astrologically, then we could get some hints, some clues as to what we need to do to bring out that potential in other people. And at the opposite end of the spectrum are the most malicious and destructive people. And what's going on with them? What has activated that astrologically, so we know and we could get some ideas on how to rechannel, to redirect that energy. So this is a kind of research that's very, very interesting, and we have achieved that goal over the many decades. So here's the birth chart of Gerald Gallego. This guy is one of the most horrific, most destructive people you can imagine. We'll talk a little bit about the things he's done. There's his birth chart. Do we see any clues? Does it give us any insight into what the dynamics are and how things could have been done differently? What kind of upbringing would he need? Is there anything that could have been done to help him become a more constructive person? So there it is, Venus and Virgo in the 12th house opposite the moon, etc. And what I had found over the years is that people would come up with rules. They would say, oh, the 12th house, self-undoing. Well, then I run the research, and I see that people who are criminals don't have planets in the 12th house any more than anybody else. Can we really come up with something? And what we have with vibrational astrology, very simple, very clear, very direct rules for this. So there's his chart, and here is the lady that he married, Charlene. They were married for a period of time, and they were serial killer team. And there's her chart. You see that conspicuous Pluto on the 7th house cusp? There it is. Okay. Let's go back to our PowerPoint presentation. Oh, let me tell you a little bit about them. So Gerald Gallego, he never met his father. His father died in prison. His mother was a prostitute, and there were many criminals in her family. So he's coming from one of the worst possible backgrounds you can imagine, and he's, the poster child of the worst potential of this family that he was brought into. His father also killed people. He was given a death sentence, etc. Just the most awful things. Now, Charlene, on the other hand, she has just the opposite kind of background. Her original name was Charlene Williams. Her parents were well-to-do. Her father got into business, and he did very well with it. She played the violin very well. She reportedly had a 160 IQ. I don't know if that's clearly documented, but she was very bright. She was doing very well. When she got into high school, everything fell apart. She got into drugs. She was having sexual affairs. She had 2 marriages fairly early on. She dropped out of college. So she's drugged out, dropped out, not in gear, all of a sudden her life just falls apart. So they meet up, Charlene and Gerald, and their relationship starts out fairly normal. They are attracted to each other. They get married. And for some period of time, I guess it was a month or two, according to what I read, it seemed fairly normal. And then Gerald starts talking to Charlene about inviting girls to their van. They would see some girls walking around, invite them in to smoke marijuana, and they would do this, and then Gerald rapes them and kills them. And they did this at least 6 times, and sometimes it was with one girl, sometimes 2 girls. In one case, it was a couple, a boy and a girl, and they killed the guy. Really unbelievably horrific, ugly, incredible murders that they were involved in. Now, Gerald, we only have B data. It's from a biography, 9 a.m. Charlene, we have AA data from a birth certificate. It's not on the hour. It's 2:50 p.m. So, we can start with Charlene's chart because we've got really good data for her. Now, what do we expect? What do we expect to be going on? Well, the simplest, most obvious thing that happens with anybody who is out of control, wild, disconnected in any kind of way is 11 vibration. That's the typical thing. Big planetary configuration in the 11 vibration, and usually with what planet? I think you guys all know this now. Uranus, the most unstable planet in the most unstable vibration. So we expect 11 vibration. We've also found with a lot of murderers that soft aspects in the 7 vibration are common. The reason it seems to be that people with soft aspects in 7 vibration develop their own internal world, that they don't get validated by other people very much. This can be wonderful, can lead to deep insights and sense of mythology and stories and mysticism. But on the negative side, people just develop their own understanding of life. You might say conspiracy theories, wild views of how things work that just are not realistic because they're living in their own internal world, cut off from other people. So let's check it out and see what's going on in their 11 vibration charts. So 11 vibration with Uranus and with an inner planet, usually Sun, Venus, or Mars, and at least 3 planets involved. So Uranus with Sun, Venus, and Mars, and another planet, something like that. So let's go. I'm going to go to Gerald's chart first, even though he's got B data, because he is, you might say, the stronger force in this. He is a continuous, nonstop killer. Charlene, has vacillated, not as much a deeply ingrained criminal mentality as Gerald, according to the biographies. And in their partnership in crime, he was, you might say, the leader, the instigator, and she went along with it. That appears to be the story of what's going on. So anyway, we're going to look at both charts. So again, here's his chart, and we look at his 11 vibration chart, and it's not really that interesting. It's not what we expect, in that we see Uranus-Neptune square with Pluto. That is disturbing, Uranus, Neptune, Pluto. And, Saturn's involved, making some soft aspects to Uranus and Neptune. We're seeing things, but nothing really conspicuous. We can look at the midpoint structure, see if it shows up there. But what do you notice? You notice the dashed lines. When you see those dashed lines, it means there's 16 vibration. We want to go up an octave or 2 or 3 octaves. In other words, go to 22, 44, 88. And every time you go up an octave, the aspects go down an octave. So if we go up 2 octaves, these 16 vibration will go down 2 octaves to 16 divided by 2 is 8, divided by 2 is 4. So I looked at the 44 and 88 vibration, and here is the 88 vibration. And now, when you look at it in 88 vibration, this is about as extreme as it ever gets for instability, for potential mental illness, emotional illness, some kind of fanaticism, some kind of way wild inspiration. It could be, anything can be positive, anything can be negative, but this is way out of the box. And we do see these kind of configurations in people with mental and emotional illness. Sun and Pluto, 4 degrees apart, opposition Uranus and Neptune that are 2 degrees apart. The whole thing spreads from 24 degrees, 54 minutes, that's essentially 25 degrees, to 28 degrees. It's spreading only a little more than 3 degrees. There's your Uranus involved with the Sun, with Neptune and Pluto. Uranus, Neptune is what makes people delusional or visionary or spiritual, like way out of the box. And notice that all of these planets except the Sun is out of orb, but Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto are making sextiles and trines to Saturn. So there, now you have your Saturn-Uranus, Neptune configuration with Pluto. Very unstable, can get very, very strange. There it is, the classic configuration that we expect. But where is it? It's in the 88 vibration chart. So these oppositions are actually in what harmonic or vibration or frequency, whatever you want to call it. They're oppositions in 88, so they're 88 times 2. 88 times 2 is 176. So we're up to 176, and we're saying that that is fundamental. That's primary. That's the force, the astrological configuration that has made him vulnerable. Brought up in the worst family with the worst possible planetary configuration, among the worst, the most sensitive. It's a recipe for disaster. And what do we have? We have one of the most extreme criminal behaviors you could ever imagine. So there it is. Extreme environment, extreme astrology, getting the most extreme result. Okay, now we want to look at Charlene. Let's go back to our notes here. So with Gerald, the 88 vibration, Sun, Uranus, Neptune, Pluto, also making trines and sextiles to Saturn, exactly what we expect, and it is extreme. Now, by the way, if we use the time adjust, we can see how long this lasts because he has only B accuracy, right? It's from biography. It's on the hour, 9 a.m. What if he was born at 8 a.m.? What if he was born at 10 p.m.? Well, just go to the time adjust and find out. And according to our notes, in the that I have in the PowerPoint, it says about 8:30 to 11:30. So I'm going to do 30 minutes when I did this time adjust. Let's go 30 minutes earlier. So I've got it 30 minutes, hit the left arrow. And the Sun, Uranus, Neptune, Pluto, still very, very solid. And where Saturn is very, very solid. We involve. So no real difference over that half hour. Let's go 30 minutes earlier. And now the Sun has gotten weaker. You see that the Sun it's now 7 degrees from Pluto. The opposition lines are a little bit weak. The Sun is starting to not be right on. This is still a very sensitive configuration, but the Sun is that inner planet. And so by 8 o'clock, it's weaker. And if we go to 7:30, then, well, what's happened here? Let's go back to 7. By 7 o'clock, the Sun is really out of it. Venus has moved in for a short amount of time. And, by 6:30 in the morning, it's really gone. Now it's just Uranus, Neptune, Pluto. And so anyway, we could say from about 8 or 8:30 in the morning, I'm going back up to 9, And then if we do this, let's do it 1 hour at a time, you'll see that it fades out by around noon. So 1 hour, go forward, it's still very strong. 2 hours later, the sun's getting weaker. 3 hours later at 12 noon, the sun is essentially out of it. And now it's Uranus, Neptune, Pluto. And, it's just not as powerful configuration. So you could say somewhere around 8 o'clock to 11 o'clock. What I had written down here is around 8:30 to 11:30. Somewhere in that time range. Is when it's strong. So it's interesting to look at. This means that we think that the birth time is probably, it's from a biography. It says 9 a.m. It's correct. Within reason. He's probably born between 8:30 and 11:30. And also, we've been playing around with true black moon Lilith, and that happens to be involved in the configuration right at that time as well. Well, let's not get into that. We're just researching Black Moon Lilith. We'll have more to say about it in the coming months as we do some more careful research with it. But there's little doubt now that Black Moon Lilith, the true Black Moon Lilith, is important. But we'll have better ideas about it very soon. Now let's look at Charlene, at her 11 vibration chart. So Gerald is exactly the kind of planetary configuration we thought might be there. And when we look at the 11 vibration chart of Charlene, again, nothing special. You're not seeing a clear, simple configuration. You're seeing these dashed lines. Here's a trine, a sextile. It's not 3 planets tied together in a tight configuration. You have Uranus, Mercury, Uranus, Moon, but it spreads, 19 degrees. The Moon, Mercury's out of orb. It's not a sharp, clear configuration. We can look at the midpoint structures. We could also look at isotraps, see if something is there. And let's go up to 88 vibration. And in the 88 vibration, there are some clearer configurations. There's a Venus, Saturn, Uranus. Venus trine Saturn, Saturn semi-sextile Uranus, and Uranus quincunx Venus. Now this changes colors. We have a rule that we want to keep the colors, but look how thick it is. The Venus quincunx Uranus has a 1-minute orb. This means that when we double or triple or quadruple this vibration of 88, the Venus, Saturn, Uranus is probably going to show up. Now, with Charlene, I forgot to mention, let's go back and see if I have it in my notes. Maybe I read over it, or maybe I forgot to make a note of it, is that this sexual affairs thing, she has something going on with intense sexuality. She is bisexual. Not that that's significant, but she has something going on with intense sexuality, as does Gerald. But Gerald's just completely crazy. I mean, he's violent. Charlene seems to be centered something around sexuality, according to the biography. Something going on there. Now, so this Venus, Saturn, Uranus looks interesting because with Venus, Saturn, Uranus, we often find a sexuality that's out of the box, not necessarily, violent and criminal, and as she gets involved in, although she tends to be following Gerald, and she ties up with him. Something about this Venus, Saturn, Uranus seems like it might be involved in 88 vibration. And she has the strong Sun Uranus. So you'll remember that Gerald has Sun Uranus with Neptune and Pluto and making soft aspects to Saturn. Here we see just Sun Uranus, and we also see a Venus, Saturn, Uranus. It's actually 4 planets, but this is very, very weak. Sun, Venus, Saturn, Uranus. It's a Venus, Saturn, Uranus, and a Sun, Uranus tied together a little bit. So her 88 vibration chart is not as crystal clear, not as strong. I'm looking at it and I'm thinking, I bet something's going on with this Venus, Saturn, Uranus. Maybe we need to go up some octaves. This is going to bring us into the very high vibrations and see what's going on. But before we do that, let's see if Charlene's 11 vibration ties into Gerald's 11 vibration. This is the rule we use. You find the huge configuration in a person's chart that is related to the activity. We found it for Gerald. This is it. Let's go back to his chart. This configuration, this, especially this Sun, Uranus, Neptune, Pluto, and Saturn works into it a little bit as well. That's it. I'm expecting that Charlene ties up with his Sun, Uranus, Neptune, Pluto, because she begins to participate in his delusional, crazy, destructive world. So how do we see that? We simply do a bi-wheel. So here is the bi-wheel with Gerald 88 vibration in the inner wheel, Charlene 88 vibration in the outer wheel, and I saved it and I put some notations on it, and there it is. This is exactly what I just showed you in the program. Right here, I just took this, saved it, and, did some illustrating on this to bring things out. And look at this. In the inner ring, Gerald's Sun-Pluto conjunction opposite Uranus-Neptune, right? His Sun at almost 25 Pisces, Pluto at 28 Pisces, Neptune at 25 Virgo, Uranus at 27 Virgo. That's the configuration. That's the astrological force behind his madness. Charlene's Sun Uranus is sitting on his Sun Uranus. Same planet to same planet. This is one of the critical rules in vibrational astrology. Same planet to same planet, meaning Sun to Sun and Uranus to Uranus. So this is like a double same planet. Her Sun Uranus on his Sun Uranus. Uranus in an 11 vibration is the most unstable thing that can happen. She gets sucked right into his world. Her Sun Uranus, instability. She's wild as a teenager. She gets wild. She's got this high IQ, doing wonderfully. She's a great violinist, all this wonderful stuff. And she goes crazy. And she goes on hard drugs, having all kinds of sexual affairs. She starts college, drops out quickly. She goes from being this, perfect person in middle-class America to dropping out of everything and becoming basically dysfunctional. Her Sun Uranus, that part of her rebelliousness, and I believe that her Venus, Saturn, Uranus is also involved. Her Venus at 23 Libra, Saturn it's basically 23 Aquarius, her Uranus at 23 Pisces. I believe that this has something to do with it as well, and this reinforces my feelings because it takes more than 2 planets to make you extreme. And she gets pulled into this extreme, crazy life. It would take more than Sun and Uranus. I believe it's her Sun and Uranus and her Venus, Saturn, Uranus. Those 2 configurations, both sharing the planet Uranus, that are the force behind her instability and inability to function within the normal range of human experience. So she does indeed get sucked into his crazier, more intense world. Okay, and you'll notice what I put here around the circle. I put in orange rectangles around any planets between 23 and 29 degrees. So these planets are also feeding in to this huge configuration. This vertical red line connecting 6 planets, his Sun, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, and her Sun and Uranus. Those 6 planets, that is like the main, the main circuit. And this is all between 23, her Uranus at 23, and his Pluto at 28. So any planet between 23 and 28 degrees of any sign is going to aspect some of these. And you see there's a lot of them. Like his, who's this on the outside? No, that's her. And she has AA data. So her moon at 27 Taurus is trine her own sun and, sextile his Pluto, it's trine his Neptune and his Uranus, etc. So there's going to be a lot of aspects formed between his planets. Her Venus on his Mars. There's a basic romantic connection because they did get married. So anyway, there's a lot of additional things happening here where these planets are aspecting some of these main planets. Just to make sure it's clear, let's do one more example. His Pluto over here at 29 Virgo is within orb of trining her Pluto. Look at that. Her Pluto, 28 Pisces. Water sign. His Pluto. No, wait, I'm getting this mixed up. She's on the outside. His Pluto, 28 Pisces. Her Pluto, 29 Scorpio. Both water signs. They're trining each other. Pluto to Pluto. We have 3 same planet to same planet. Sun to Sun. Let's look at it. His Sun, 24 Pisces. Very tightly opposition. Her Sun, 24 Virgo. Same degree. His Uranus at 27 Virgo is opposite her Uranus, 23 Pisces. That's a 4.5 degree orb. Not super tight. We do allow 8 degrees. So there's a very tight Sun-Sun. Not so strong. Moderate Uranus, and a tight Pluto. Remember, we are in the 88 vibration chart. Everything is moving 88 times faster. So these outer planets are not, how we think of like Uranus, Neptune, Pluto, like moving on 1 or 2 minutes a day. If they're moving 1 minute a day, in this chart they're moving 88 minutes a day, they're moving over a degree a day. So they're just like Sun, Mercury, and Venus in their speed and their impact. So this is all very personal stuff going on. Okay, so there it is. There it is. We have found, by using the simple, basic rules of vibrational astrology, what the astrological force behind their destructive madness is. There it is. The 88 vibration chart. Okay, now, I'm still not completely satisfied because I'm wondering about her Venus, Saturn, Uranus. Does that get involved somehow? Her Uranus at 23 Pisces, Saturn at 23 Aquarius, Venus at 23 Libra. To see this, I'm going to need to go up at least double or triple the 88 vibration to bring... let's go back and look at it in the chart wheel so you're clear about what I'm saying. If we go back to the 88 vibration chart, this Venus, Saturn, Uranus, with these very thick lines, 2 of them are green, the quincunx is brown. If I double this or triple this, it'll probably bring them into a simpler kind of configuration, maybe a T-square or a grand trine, that we can look at and see if it connects with his chart. So let's take a look at it. Let's see what my next notes are, so I don't miss anything. Yeah, what I did is I went to the 88 times 4 vibration. I also looked at 88 times 3. I noticed that in 88 times 4, it's easy to see what's going on. Let's look at it. Now, I told you that the title of this presentation is High Vibrations. We're going to go to the 352 vibration chart. And we're going to look at aspects in the chart. Here it is, in the inner ring. I put Charlene in the inner ring because I'm interested in her Venus, Saturn, Uranus. There's so much going on here. Let's focus on the Venus, Saturn, Uranus. I put it in light blue. So in the inner ring, Charlene, 352nd harmonic, 88 times 4, and she has a grand trine. Venus at 2 Cancer, Uranus at 2 Pisces, and Saturn at 1.5 Scorpio. Very tight grand trine of Venus, Saturn, Uranus. And what's also happening with this Venus, Saturn, Uranus is, it's going to make midpoint structures, of course. Uranus is at the Venus, Saturn midpoint, and Saturn's at Venus, Uranus, and Venus is at Saturn, Uranus. When you have a grand trine, and it's all within like a 1 degree orb, it's extremely powerful. Unlike a grand trine that spreads 3, 4, 5 degrees, when it's within a degree orb, all those midpoint structures are there. Now, does his chart activate it? Yes. His Jupiter is at 3 Scorpio. And what I did in the software is I selected the midpoint comparison, and I copied and pasted some of the midpoints here. And what you see is that in blue is Charlene. Her Venus at 2 Cancer is at the midpoint of her own Uranus and his Jupiter. So right here, the blue Venus at the red Jupiter Uranus midpoint has an opposition. So Venus is opposition Jupiter Uranus, but blue is her Venus opposition the midpoint of his Jupiter and her Uranus. And the orb is 6 minutes. 6 minutes. His Jupiter at 3 Scorpio 05 is placed perfectly, like within 6 minute orb, to put her Venus at that midpoint of Jupiter Uranus. And with his Jupiter here, it's also perfect for putting her Uranus at 2 Pisces right at the midpoint of her own Venus and his Jupiter, within a 13-minute orb. So this position of 3 Scorpio 05, which is about 1.5 degrees past her past her Saturn, so his Jupiter is tying into the grand trine. But what makes it especially powerful is not only does his Jupiter come in and become part of her grand trine, it's placed perfectly to make 2 extremely strong midpoint structures. When the midpoint structures are less than 15 minutes, they're very powerful. So, question, does his chart activate her Venus, Saturn, Uranus? He has only one planet really closely involved, Jupiter, but it's perfectly placed. It's placed right on the grand trine to make 2 very powerful midpoint structures. So here we can see why she marries him. Why would this very intelligent lady, highly educated, it appears he's not so intelligent, he's certainly not educated. Autopsies and stuff seem to show he's got some kind of brain damage and so on. Why is she attracted to this person? What do they have in common other than the fact they're rebellious? Well, we saw in the comparison of the 88 vibration charts that rebellion, she was attracted to it. Her sun Uranus pulled into his sun Uranus, Neptune, Pluto. That's part of it. But there is also this beautiful Jupiter of his getting involved with her Venus, Saturn, Uranus. There was a kind of nice attraction going on. It actually worked for a month or two. But he's so far gone that he just, sucked her into his madness, and they became serial killers together. Now, another interesting thing shows up. I brought up this chart because I wanted to see if his chart activated her Venus, Saturn, Uranus. It does. But I noticed something else. I noticed that if I moved his birth time back 4 minutes from 9 a.m. to 8:54, it puts his sun exactly on her sun and his moon exactly on her moon. And I mean exact. This is a 1 minute orb for the moon, and sun to sun is a 6 minute orb. Extremely tiny orbs. So let me show you how we do this. What we're going to do is we're going to pull up his 350-second vibration chart and do a bi-wheel, which I've already done. So here it is. So in the inner ring is Charlene's 352 vibration chart. In the outer ring is Gerald's 352 vibration chart, but I've time adjusted it back 6 minutes to 8:54. I'm going to do the time adjust, interactive chart adjust, and go 1 minute later and watch his moon at 20 Scorpio 05. Let me just do 6 minutes and just, instead of jumping around, go to 6 minutes. I'm going to put it back to the recorded time of 9 a.m. 6 minutes later, his moon is at 9 Sag. So in 6 minutes, his moon in the 350-second harmonic chart has moved 19 degrees. 19 degrees, moving about 3 degrees a minute. Remember, it's moving 352 times faster than the birth chart. So if we move it back 6 minutes, moon is on moon. It also makes the sun more exact, because 6 minutes later, the sun is at 9.5. It has a 1.5 degree orb. 1.5 degree orb. And then I go back earlier, and now it has only a 6 minute orb. So it's making a big difference, the 6 minutes of time. It's fascinating just to wonder that if Gerald was born 6 minutes earlier, then, let's just cancel out of this. Let me go back to the PowerPoint. Then we have what I have in yellow here. Let's see, this is him on the outside, his sun Neptune on her sun, his moon on her moon, and we have sun, and moon exact. And also interesting is that his Mars is right at the midpoint of the suns and moons. And I show that here. His Mars is at the sun-moon midpoint and the moon-sun midpoint, both his sun to her moon and her sun to his moon. It's at both of them. Further reinforcing this whole sun-moon connection in the 352 vibration, which is where some of the subtle interaction, the subtle integration of their charts of her Venus, Saturn, Uranus, higher, you can look at them as overtones of the basic 88. The 88 is the basic driving force. And when we go up 2 more octaves to 88 times 4, we're finding more fine connections. It's like looking at a beautiful filigree, like a fine tapestry, and we're finding more and more connections and connecting to her Venus, Saturn, Uranus, connecting the suns and moons together. So this is also a way we sometimes rectify charts. But let me make this point clear. Regardless of what time he was born, even if he was born at 9:30 or 10 o'clock in the morning, instead of this rectified time of 8:54, their connections in the 88 vibration chart are enough to explain why he is the way he is, why she is the way she is, and why they came together and why they did exactly what they did. So it's fascinating. And we're just looking at this to show how you can see the connections to her Venus, Saturn, Uranus, and also we're seeing some of the ways that rectification gets involved and how time sensitive some of these things are as well. But again, even without this 352 vibration chart, we see the basic thing going on with them. So now you see this is one example of why we've gone to very high vibrations. Let me go back to the 88 vibration. This 88 vibration is the fundamental force behind their criminal behavior. And it's an opposition, which means it's 88 times 2. It's 176. Think of the 176, which is 11 times 16, is the fundamental force going on. And then we go 4 times higher, and we pick up, I think we're picking up even some additional things. But without a doubt, just fitting our basic way of interpreting, we need to go to 176 to find the fundamental things going on. So this is a good example of, just the basic interpretation, 11 vibration, strong Uranus, and how you can confirm the idea with compatibility and with forecasting. So there's this basic rule. Let's go over this basic rule that when you find a planetary configuration in a chart and you think that's responsible for some behavior, for example, for Gerald Gallego, Sun, Uranus, Neptune, Pluto, this configuration in 88 vibration, we think that's the basic driving force. There's two ways to verify it. You don't have to just have that. Two ways to verify it with his chart without having to do additional research is if he has a significant relationship, which he does. He has a partner in crime, literally. That other person should be connected to this configuration. Because if that other person is involved, and she is, Charlene Gallego is directly involved with his criminal behavior, she must connect to it for us to have any confidence in our theory. And wow, does she ever. Her Sun Uranus on his Sun Uranus Neptune Pluto. Amazing. So two ways to validate your theory that you have found the planetary configuration. One, look at compatibility. If there is, a compatibility to look at where the other person is involved with the activity with the person, which for research purposes we're lucky to have here. And the second thing is transits. At the time that Gerald commits these crimes, he's at his most extreme malicious place in his life, this should be activated by transits. And I did not do that yet, but I could. I think we have some dates and times, I'm pretty sure we do, for when he murders these women. And we can take the transits at the time of those murders, convert them to 88 vibration, and compare them. If you'd like me to make another video on it, I can. And I'm quite confident it's going to show up, because this stuff just really works. It's amazing. So two ways to validate it: compatibility and forecasting. Compatibility with somebody who's involved in that, in whatever that configuration says. Transits when that configuration is expressing itself very intensely. Which, of course, in this case would be at the time that he is involved in one of these murders. So, the hope that astrology can identify clearly configurations in the best and worst people. Here we have the worst. It can. We have increasing confidence every day in this through controlled research and by applying the ideas as we're doing here. And we can see the kinds of things that are needed to make the person function better. Needs tremendous inspiration, excitement, liveliness of a positive, constructive kind in his life. You can't sit him down in a room and expect him to be quiet and, obey orders or something. Exposure to crime, to things that decrease the ability to have impulse control. All these things are going to exacerbate the problem. So we can see what needs to be done. And by the way, I'm sure a lot of you are looking at this and you're seeing all kinds of additional things. This is Charlene. Her Mercury makes a T-square to this whole thing at 29 Sag. I mean, all these other planets also feeding into it. It's really amazing. Okay, so that's it, my friends. An example of the very, very high vibrations, why we are using them. And to summarize, why are we using them? Because we apply the basic rule. Let's look at 11 vibration. Where do we find it? Not in 11, not 22, not 44. We find it in 88. And then we find additional things in 88 times 4 and 352. But definitely 88 without a doubt. So, so that's you just apply the rules and you're going to find that this is what's going on. In fact, what seems to be happening, is that those things that only last 5 minutes to a half hour to an hour, that go by fairly quickly, they seem to be the most individual and the most powerful. If something flies by too fast, like it's moving 1 degree a second of time, probably that's too fast and the person doesn't pick it up. So at a certain point, if you go to high and high enough vibrations, like the 10,000 or 20,000 vibrations, everything's spinning around so fast, it's like the human organism cannot detect it. It's like a wheel spinning and you can't see the spokes anymore. It just goes by too fast. So there is a limit to the vibrations that affect us. And more and more we're thinking of it as time. The vibrations that last a few minutes are strong in that time range seem to be especially powerful. So again, vibrational astrology is, becoming more and more different from the usual ways of thinking. Okay, I think that's it. Let me see if I have any other slides. That's it. There are a few other things in here I didn't talk about. The way her Uranus and Pluto are connected to her moon and his moon, activating it. But let me mention one other thing I didn't mention. On same planet to same planet, if we use this birth time for Gerald of 6 minutes before the hour, 8:54, instead of in the biography, just gave a round number time of 9 a.m. We have his, let's see, this is him in the outer ring, his sun to her sun, his moon to her moon, and there's also a Mercury to Mercury. Very, very tight sextile, half a degree. 25 Taurus to 25 Pisces. So when you see these same planet to same planet, they are a strong magnetism. So all of this would explain why they got married and they had this life together and were partners in crime, because to have such a strong connection and to have such extraordinary behavior, you need extraordinary astrology to support it. And the people that are special in your life, for better or worse, doesn't matter if it's wonderful, great contributions to society or the most destructive and dysfunctional, there are going to be very special connections that make that happen. And that's exactly what we see with Gerald and Charlene. So we found the configuration, and it's confirmed through the compatibility. And if we want to, I can make videos on another confirmation, which would be through the transits. And you see how his planetary configuration gets activated at the time of his murders. Okay, my friends, thank you very much for listening. God bless. Namaste.